You can delete the sketch layer unless you've got something else on there that you need to add in a later date. I don't, so there it goes. Alrighto. So that's the main bulk of it done. The last two we've got is shading. Now, as I said, there's two ways you can shade. The easiest way I found is to create a new layer, clipping mask, and I usually have it set to shade. And now I'll just find a color that I'll think will suit. It's like the problem I've given myself here is I've given two pretty contrasting colors here. Let's see what we can find. No, well, hold on. What am I doing? Let's spread that out to there. I find this is a really useful way of finding a color that'll work for the majority. It's like, where was it? That color there. That looks nice against her. What color we got here? We have a very fluoro pink. So fluoro pink it is. We'll just keep both of those selected. Right, so the easiest way to do this is have that once again set to shade. Have it set low. I usually have mine set at about 20 in the like medium to low 20s. And then what I do after I do the base layer of shading is once again another shade layer. I have it set just a little bit lower. Right, no. It appears it doesn't want to work with this kind of grey. Let's darken that up a little bit. There we go. Yes. I have them set a little bit lower, and it brings out a nice effect, or in this case a little bit higher. It really depends on the colors you use. I know for most of my normal shading I use overlay, but for pixels, shade seems to work just a tad easier. And just do this in segments. Don't try and do it all in one hit. So I'll do a couple of parts first, like her pants. I'll do one half of the leg and then somewhere else. So with the first preliminary layer, don't be afraid to be liberal. Really, it doesn't... Well, being minimal with your shading means like sometimes it's hard to see where the light is. I know I used to be guilty of that, where I'd used to put like minimal shading. But this way, this method works a lot better. So don't forget to follow creases in clothing if you can. I'm not a Picasso at this. Like, I'm not good at lighting by any means, but I just try to use what little knowledge I do have, and I just try and see where little folds would be going, and then you go up to the layer after that with your darker color or your same color depending on what you're using, and you just go through again, just keeping a little bit less liberal this time. Pardon me. You just kind of I might end up speeding this up a bit more for you guys, because this is going to get a bit boring, me constantly going through with this. So I'll stop it here and speed it up, and if anything comes up, I'll let you guys know. Alright, sorry about that. If you notice that big pause in the middle, that's because my neighbor came over and decided to interrupt me while I was drawing. You may have also noticed towards the end there I did lower the opacity of the shade layers after merging them, and I did even change the hue because I noticed that the pink really wasn't turning out so well. That's alright too. It's like, you don't need to stick with the color you've started out with if you don't think it's working. So there's the shading done. That's still on its own separate layer. Let's see if I can get that unclipped there. So there it is, all in its own glory. Alrighty, so it's the shading done. The last step we've got here is details. Now, this can be colouring your line art, which is really simple. What I like to do is I take the darkest shade of the lines you need to, of the colours, and I darken it just a little bit. Like so, for example. And then the easiest way to do this is to just, it's a bit of a slow process, but it works. Just darken things up and go over them. I'll speed this up again for you guys because I know that this can also be a bit of a process. Alright, so that's the bulk of the, well, that's the line colouring done. I might just darken that up a bit more because the pants lines are a bit dark. That's a bit better. Alright, so you've just taken a line art there and you've made it go from pitch black, which it's not bad, but colouring the line art really does lighten things up a little, though I might have to re-go over the hair. I'll do that. Hold on. Setting that back up. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Well, the last couple of things I like to do is overlaying. So for this, you're actually just going to use one of your normal pencil tools and white, and just blot in some white. And this just really makes everything pop. And a few people might consider this cheating because this is pixel art and I'm no longer using a pixel brush, but hey, you win some, you lose some. I'm just using the blur tool here to blur it all up, and then you just hit overlay and it makes everything nice and shiny. And I personally think this adds a really nice touch. Now the last thing you can do to this is again using the overlay tool, but backlight with the eyes you're going to use the pixel tool, or the binary tool I should say. And with this you just have overlay set to white and you go over certain areas, like I'll do this for the hair because it looks quite nice. Don't worry about being too accurate here, it's really not an issue, it's just meant to make things pop a little. I like to do it for the hair, I like to do it just for the bridge of the nose here, just around the jaw, a few under the mouth, nose, cheeks, etc. Fingies. A little for the shirt here, a bit for the neck. And this really one of the best finishing touches, and a lot of people's, like I know for a fact when I started out with pixel art, I really didn't know what I was doing when it came to colouring. I used dithering, and as someone whose eye strains easily, dithering really hurt actually. It really put a strain on your eye, at least this way. I just realised I've forgotten to colour a bit of the tail. At least this way it's a nice, even, I suppose you could call this like the cell shading of the pixel world. And it's, I suppose it's the easier method, but easy doesn't always have to look lazy. It's like easy can look nice without having to be, you know, boring or bloody half-assed. It's like one of these usually takes me about 40 minutes from sketch to completion, maybe a little bit shorter depending on what's going on. But that's really it, guys. After following those 6 pretty easy steps, you've got yourself a really nice looking pixel character. Now as for like a few of them I've made blink, that's really easy. You just like copy the eyes, and what I like to do is just get a copy of the eyes and erase like a top half of it, and just quickly use the binary tool to go over, and it still keeps the detail you originally put in the eye, but it's also giving it that really quick, easy animation. And I know this looks a bit silly at the moment because you've got the one eye open, the one eye closed, but yeah, and I just keep doing that, and I go through, I usually use about 3 or 4 layers depending. And yeah, that's really it, guys. If there's anything else you need to know or want me to cover, just shoot me a PM or leave me a comment, and I'll see if I can get around to it. Thanks for watching.